Okay, so the topic of the documentary is basically white women and like being a Karen and just white supremacy in action. I'm saying a lot of words that I probably shouldn't be saying on this live, but it is what it is. So I really wanted to make this live more like for not to, hopefully not to re-traumatize any people of color that follow me, any black women that follow me. This is really, this is very much meant to be kind of a call out, kind of a expose of like how well this documentary really captured the process of like a Karening of a, and I apologize in advance to anyone named Karen. It just, that's become the term for it. And I really just think it's so important to talk about this. And I wanted to get my thoughts together because I want to post this longer version of the video to YouTube so that we can have like more of an in-depth conversation about it. But also I wanted to get my thoughts together because I also want to make a series of TikTok videos about it. And I find that lives are like a really good way for me to receive feedback in real time and, just see anything that I'm missing for anyone that's like willing to contribute their experience or whatever, or just anything that I'm not able to easily see because I'm also a white woman. This happens unfortunately all the time. Madeline, no, it's just the beginning. I actually just have my makeup done because I happened to be on a call with a friend earlier. So we are just getting started. Hey, Belle. Yeah, the documentary was very, very enraging. Yes, Nat, this is now on Netflix. It's actually the #1 movie on Netflix right now. So if you just go to Netflix, you'll be able to find it pretty easily. And I think it's a must watch for white women, white people in general, but white women especially because it like they didn't even need to like do this whole like expository thing. They just showed the behavior and it just very, very much speaks for itself. Okay. So the premise of the documentary is basically like what are the dangers of living in America for people of color and what are the real dangers of like white supremacy? And how is it weaponized so easily against people of color? And I feel like they did an incredible job showing it. So let's just start with the basics and let me set the scene for you. So this whole documentary is about a small community in Florida. It is a place where people, I think, can rent like a duplex and some people can buy them, but they're mostly like out for rent. And this is a place where quite a few families live. And this is clearly not like a very high income community, but it's also not per se like a low income community. It's just, it's like a middle of the road kind of place. And there's just happens to be a lot of kids in the neighborhood and everything. It seems like this community was doing really well. This was one of the communities that kind of reminded me of like my own childhood in Ukraine, where spoiler alert, there's going to be spoilers. But here's the thing, they're not really spoilers because this happens all the time. This is a thing. Like the documentary gives you statistics at the end that let you know that this is not a one-off. This happens actually all the time. And honestly, the outcome in the documentary is a lot better. I mean, not better, but it's a lot more than other victims get. Yeah, exactly. So many get away with it. So that's the problem. That's what they're trying to expose. And so this community was doing really well. They had this understanding that, the kids play and, if you're one of the parents, you're keeping an eye on them. Everybody's kid is basically everybody's kid, like there's no such thing as that's her kid, that's whatever. It's like very much a community-minded little community. Thank you. And then bam, this lady moves in. And this at the time of in 2022, she had only been living there for like 2 years. Yeah, that's how it started for all of us, by the way. Yeah. Like I said, I can kind of relate to this because that's kind of how I grew up in Ukraine. Nobody was like owning property where I lived. We were, no, both sides were not wrong. We're not going to do that. We are not going to do that. She did not go too far. See, this is what I hate about the individualistic culture in America is that y'all feel so entitled to like to things that then you complain about, right? It's this whole thing of like, oh, these kids are so loud and they're so disruptive and da da da. Why is nobody having kids? Who's gonna work? Da da da. Do you know what I mean? It's this individualistic culture. I want to be comfortable and I don't really care about anybody else. They're kids. They're gonna scream and play outside. That's the thing. I actually really miss that sound. I don't live in a place where like kids run around and scream and play outside. And like, I miss that. I used to be a teacher and I miss the sound of recess. I miss like that. I don't know. People's individuality here in the United States is what's going to bring down is what's going to make everything crumble. Okay, we'll get into all of that, Storm, because Storm says the kids were taunting her, playing is fine, being loud is fine. She was actually antagonizing them. And this is like victim blaming. What you're doing right now is victim blaming. Those kids were victims. Kids are not, it's the same way that y'all will call underage girls that grown men groom and abuse. You'll call them jailbait. That's what that is. That's victim blaming. At the end of the day, you are victim blaming children. So please go sit in a corner and be properly ashamed of yourself, because that's disgusting. I cannot believe you would say that. Kids are going to run around and play outside. You cannot hold them to the same, exactly, Peyton. You cannot hold them to the same standard and the same like type of behavior as an adult. And in fact, I think we might be better off if we did that more often as adults. A lot of adults are missing play in their life. And again, I blame capitalism and individualism for that. Y'all don't know how to have fun. Starting with the most important part of this. Hi, precious things. Thank you so much. We're breaking down the show and you got here just in time. If you know the premise, I've sort of just set up the scene. So this community was doing fine. They were getting along. Exactly. Then people complain that kids are always inside playing video games. Very true. They were getting along. There was a very much a community-minded attitude. And people were looking out for each other. And that's what saved that community in the end. Spoiler alert, a little bit. I hate being like, oh, there was some justice in the end. There wasn't. It's not really justice, but okay. And so what happens is this lady moves in, and the first thing that this white lady tries to do, mind you, she's not the only white lady in the community, but this particular white lady, the first thing that she tries to do, and I'm wondering if anybody else caught this, because drop it in the comments. What's the first thing that she fucking tries to do when she moves in? In my opinion, the first thing that this white woman does when she moves into this neighborhood is she tries to colonize land that does not belong to her. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I am fucking wrong. The fact that she literally bought a sign and planted it on land that did not belong to her. Mind you, she's renting this place, so it doesn't belong to her like at all whatsoever. She's probably using, honestly, she did not seem like she had a job. Honestly, she's probably using government assistance to pay for this place. Okay, the same thing that people will demonize, people of color of doing, or immigrants of doing. No, Storm, the landlord literally denied planting that sign. That's the problem, that's so cute. That's the problem, is that she was doing things outside of even the landlord's jurisdiction. He said it multiple times in the show that he does not own that land. This is what I mean. You guys will just hear whatever the fuck you want to hear, and then you'll spread the misinformation around. That's actually crazy that you would come in here and say that, because you need to go back and watch the documentary and open your ears and make sure that you are hearing what they're saying and not what you want to be hearing. No, he did not. He owns the place where she lives. If it's a duplex situation, they were built as like duplexes. The most of the land that's not people's front yard or backyard is not considered part of anybody's property. It's like living in an apartment building and then saying that, like, this actually, I used to live in this apartment complex, and my best friend lived literally directly across from, right next to the playground where all the kids would play. And it would be the same as like her parents saying, nobody can play out there because that's part of our property. We can hear you. And like the point is, the kids were allowed to be there. Police came out multiple times, and trust me, if this were, Storm is just rage baiting. I actually shouldn't have taken the bait, and y'all don't either. Just ignore them. my mods will mute them or whatever. And thank y'all for being here. I see that I have a mod in the chat and I really, really appreciate that because honestly, I don't have like a super long time to be here. So I'm trying to, uh, I'm trying to go through my notes in about an hour, but we'll see. Because I have a lot of notes. So the first thing that she tries to do is to plant her flag on land that does not belong to her. So this is the thing, right? It's that like individualistic Karen colonizer mindset that no, because this affects me in a way that I don't like or I'm bothered by or whatever. I'm just gonna claim whatever it is, to try and like get rid of the problem. And it's like, no, you're literally trying to colonize land that doesn't belong to you because you don't like the children that are playing there. I also would love to see what her reaction would have been if those kids were white. Because I don't think she would do literally a damn thing that she did. Because white kids, if it was like white kids playing out there, I think she would be like, this is so precious. She would probably be like out there feeding them cookies and stuff like that because the root of all of this is racism and the colonizer mindset. So that was my first note that I wrote down. I was like, this lady literally just the nerve, she moves into this neighborhood. She moves into this place where everybody was getting along just fine. Yeah. And then she doesn't even talk to them. She doesn't get to know them, anything like that. She just puts the sign out, And then when somebody gets upset with her, that's like, hey, no, like our kids have always played here. This has always been fine. Whoever lived here before you didn't do this and you have no right to do this. And they get pissed and like take out the sign and like, throw it behind them. She perceives that as violence. That was just people rightfully claiming their territory that she was wrongfully trying to claim. And this is the whole like the mindset of the NIMBYs, the white people that are like not in my backyard or whatever. They're like, yeah, we want everyone to have like all this stuff, but just like not here. You know what I mean? Can we put them somewhere else? That's the thing. Like that's the mindset of just not in my back. This is literally the not in my backyard mindset. And I just want to address one comment really quick. Authentically Autumn says, thank you for speaking up for people of color. I want y'all to know that like when we do this, we're speaking up for everybody. Do you know what I mean? We have to really adopt that mindset because in a way, yes, but in a way, it's also like that's the key to liberation. It's not like some kind of favor I'm doing anybody. We are all in this like actually together. And if you see that, then you will be more likely to speak up on these issues because you will understand how much they affect you too. And the root of all oppression is any amount of oppression. No one is free until everyone is free. Exactly, B. And weirdly enough, TikTok hit that comment. So there you go. Now everybody can see it. So I recently did a video that TikTok kind of suppressed. Thank you, Slam. Good to see you. That TikTok kind of suppressed, I think because it was like really long or whatever. That white lady was not crazy, just racist. I think even if she did have mental issues, they were clearly tinged with racism. Like that, I wrote that down. Like that's one of my notes is like, could this have been mental illness? Sure. But why was it so racist in its nature? Like it's speaking to a bigger problem. There you go, Aaliyah. Thank you for putting that out there. Thank you, Andy Pants. Yeah, authentically Autumn, I completely understand that sentiment. And I immediately was like, the thing is like people of color don't need to watch this. Like you don't need to be re-traumatized over again by something that is like a reality to you. The people that need to see this are white women like me and just white people in general that are going to be willing to listen. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is like people of color do not need to be watching this because that's a reality that is you frankly don't need to be reminded of. But I got a lot of questions on my video that I did about white women and how anger is like discouraged, and a lot of people were like, but anger is not discouraged, like but white women get angry all the time and like they have. Yeah, Cassie, I totally can understand that. It was heartbreaking. It was really, really heavy once you realize like where it's going, you're like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, I was hoping it would be less consequential, I guess is the right word, but it's consequential to be a person of color trying to live in the United States. It has consequences just for existing. And that's literally what happened here. So a lot of people were confused because they were like, but white women are allowed to be angry and all this stuff. And I'm like, I think what you're perceiving as anger is the sanctioned violence that white women are allowed to impart onto people of color. So anger also has a purpose. Do you know what I mean? The point I'm trying to make is that she is allowed to be violent. This lady is allowed to be violent. She's not just angry. She's allowed to be violent and weaponize her place in white supremacy, in that hierarchy. And what I'm really referencing here is the book, They Were Her Property. If you haven't read that book and you're a white woman, you need to read that book. Because a lot of white women, when we get to talking about the patriarchy and the ways in which that women are oppressed, we tend to look at the whole of like men and that's real. All that stuff is very real. But we tend to have this binary of men are bad and women are good. And we tend to have these bioessentialist outcomes of that mindset where we stop believing that women can also perform violence against others and that women are not these perfect goddesses and God was a woman and all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't subscribe to any of that because white women were slave owners. White women were not just that, but they were voluntarily so. Like, this was the boss babe. This was the original boss babe of the United States. Like, boss babing has been around, but it just used to be that your parents would pass down people to you. And then you would participate in the system of slavery as a slave owner, as a white woman. So white women are allowed to be violent, like fantastically violent, like excruciatingly violent. They would do things to those people that they quote unquote owned that are unconscionable and unthinkable, which is why I'll never subscribe to that bioessentialist, argument. 50% of women voted for Orange Man in this election. So we cannot talk about women at scale as if they're like the good gender and I don't like that because we far, far, far from liberated when we still have white women out here acting like this. They are essentially traitors to other women. They're traitors to feminism and traitors to equality because they want to weaponize the systems that they're part of. And another thing I wrote down too is that this is the reason why white women love empowerment rather than actual liberation. This is why white women so often don't fight alongside of Black women for liberation because they don't want the systems to actually crumble because the systems benefit them. They just want like a little extra. Like they want like the things that affect them to be not there anymore. Right? Yeah, they think they're going to be exempt once that men let them join in the workforce or once, they're allowed to own property or whatever. It's like your property was people. Like you literally thought it was okay to own people and you didn't want to liberate them. Yeah, there are no VIP sections in any of these power systems. They're all corrupt to serve one type of person, Yeah, we are traitors so often, and even without like knowing it, even without and it's because we refuse to see the full picture. Refuse. There's willful ignorance, and then there's like the deep kind of ignorance that you have because you don't have the lived experience. And it's the unconscious bias. So you have to be actually willing to like educate yourself continuously. The work never really ends because you have so many blind spots because your privilege is so visceral. And that's what I'm really here to talk about with this documentary. God, I'm being so fucking long-winded, but y'all are adding a lot of good points in the comments. And yeah, still act like that. Absolutely. Still act like that in the workplace. That's why, Black women were saying for a while thank you, Slam. This is why Black women were saying that if they had to choose between a white woman and a white man, as far as like in the office, they would choose the white man. The other thing, so A, she was trying to colonize land. B, she is allowed to be violent in order to do that. She is allowed to be violent, especially against minorities that sort of sit below her on this thing. And also, I think because she was clearly like, she clearly didn't have a job. Okay. So she clearly was either living off of her social security or receiving some other type of government assistance. She needed to like lift herself up above the station where she felt like she was sitting at, if that makes sense. Like she was taking like her poverty or whatever personally, and she was like, all these people, look at them and like, what do I get? I worked my whole life. Like it's a thing. It's a thing. And so now B says, yes, the cops really let her think her behavior was okay. And yes, that's because she always had to act passively submissive to those other white people. She always had to, that's why white women make themselves the victim. That's why they turn around so quick from antagonizing small children and their parents and then turn around and cry on the phone to the police or be like, they were harassing me. They were throwing things at me. She threw that sign at me when really the lady threw it behind her back, and everybody, including other white women, corroborated that story. And those white women actually had solidarity because they understood how important it is for them to be like part of that community that protects each other, etc. And when I tell you they had probably their own ulterior motives for that, and honestly, that is what it is. That is what it is. We should all realize that our liberation is not guaranteed without the liberation of everybody else. And so that's kind of your ulterior motive. Like if you don't have your neighbor's back, they're not going to have your back, you know? And this white lady moved in there with a very individualistic mindset. Like she clearly hasn't been burned that many times before. Honestly, if I had to, like, this would be interesting to do a deep dive on because I just thought of this, but I bet you she was the victim. I say victim, very loosely here. She was probably the victim of like either her husband unaliving early or divorcing her for somebody younger. And so she never had that experience of actually living in like a poverty adjacent type situation. And so this was all a shock to her and she needed to like gain control. That's why, like I say, she literally had the nerve to go out there and plant a flag and try to colonize land that never belonged to not just her, but to the landlord that was renting out the place to her. Crazy work. So, but every time the cops would come or every time she would call the cops, she would make it into like I'm a victim type situation. And that's how she would keep getting away with it because they're like, well, she's just this old lady, like she's harmless. When it's really like she was not fucking harmless. She was actually very harmful and very ill-intentioned, and she was not willing to stop at anything. And so what she's hoping to do, and this is part of something I learned from They Were Her Property, from that book, is that she's hoping that with enough pestering, she can gain legal power under the current system to control these people that she feels entitled to control, these children that she feels entitled to control, these children that she feels like are taking away her peace and her, whatever, her empowerment. Because that's empowerment, right? Not liberation. So empowerment allows you as a woman or whatever, as a minority, to lobby for rights that will ultimately really only help a little bit and really only help you. This is why white women, when it came time to fight for the right to suffrage and the right to vote, they were like, well, we can't all march together. We can either have a white procession or y'all can march by yourself as like the Black women, but we can't do both because they thought that would give them like less of a chance of receiving the right to suffrage. And really, that was just empowerment. Liberation would have been all the women marching together and actually scaring the fuck out of all the men, with their solidarity. That's liberation. When you give up your privilege and you give up empowerment, which doesn't really serve you because it keeps the systems like intact, you gain solidarity and you gain actual liberation. There's a lot to say just about that, but let me check in on the comments. It was a heartbreaking watch, y'all. I have like no words for how heartless the whole thing was, and just for how we'll get into all of that because she had absolutely zero remorse. Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate your kind words. I really appreciate the support. So why are people violent? Because violence is what allows people to have privilege. Like, where do y'all think privilege comes from? Like, violence. That's what white privilege is. That's what male privilege is. It's violence. It's I will enact violence against you if you don't do what I want you to do. That's what it is. Okay, Tremaine says, I just Googled it and it says there was no information stating Susan had ever been married. Well, that doesn't mean she wasn't like shacking up with a man before all this. Relax Babe says, is privilege truly beneficial or disassociative? Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Tremaine. Privilege is bloody. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's like it happens at other people's expense. Like, you have blood on your hands if you have privilege. And I know that's like the friend that's too woke, like whatever. I don't care. I don't know what to tell you because you are essentially profiteering off of the fact that other people are suffering. Like, you can't have nice things unless other people don't have nice things. Like, if y'all have ever seen the movie Us, that's what that movie's about. Like, that's what that movie is about. That's what Jordan Peele was trying to say. And it goes even as far as it crosses all the planes of intersectionality. And this even applies to other people that have been marginalized. But it's like your success comes at the fact that other people are suffering. Yes, to be at the top, there always has to be people beneath you. So when you have privilege, you need to understand is because other people don't. Other people lack privilege. They have abuse. Like, they're literally suffering from abuse while you are benefiting from privilege. That's what that is. And yeah, I completely agree, AIZ. We need to abolish hierarchical systems. That's what it comes down to. Every single of these hierarchical systems, we tend to think of them as like a triangle, but they're actually, the reason that they're so fucking hard to get rid of is because they're a pyramid. They're a pyramid. And yes, relax, babe. That's exactly why. It's so that there is this illusion of power. Thank you, Trinae. It's so that there is, yeah. Crystal, I wouldn't want you to get through it as a Black woman. I am so sorry for everybody who had to watch that and just be re-traumatized or be so traumatized by the fact that that could be their reality. And especially the stats at the end were really, really discouraging because it's just about to get worse with the administration that we have. I really hate to say that, but it is. Yeah, there you go, London. I went to a white school and the girls start noticing their privilege at a young age. That's what I learned from They Were Her Property as well, is that this literally starts as children, literally children. Okay, so here's the progression. So this is the part that I really wanted to cover just because how can it get worse? Do you think it really will? They got rid of DEI. They're going to get rid of gay marriage. They're going to get rid of right to divorce. All of these things y'all need to understand are going to impact marginalized communities so much more than we can even realize, like with our white privilege. Everything is going to get worse. When things get worse for one community of people, we all suffer, and that's what people don't fucking understand. It's so fucking infuriating that people don't understand, and it's going to hurt women, absolutely, because all of it is rooted in misogyny, and it's going to hurt people of color because all of it is rooted in racism. It's going to hurt people in poverty, or I should rather even say not poverty, but people that are not part of the 1%. That is the largest marginalized community, is the poor, is people that are not in the 1%. We're really, truly all in this together. And once you understand that, you can start the process of liberation. But until you understand that, you're going to be spinning your fucking wheels. Oh, well, women just need the right to work. Black women could have told us a long time ago that working is not going to liberate us. It might empower us, and that's one thing, but Black women have always been forced into working. Exactly, we did. And nobody listened. That's because nobody listens. Everybody wanted to be a boss babe and prove their way up the pyramid. You know, Taylor Swift with her, if I was a man, then I'd be the man. Babe, why do you want to be the man? Why is that your goal? You know, that's like white women's mindset right there in a nutshell in that song. And is she right? Yes. But is she also super wrong? Yes. Yes. She's technically right, but her understanding of it is wrong. And yeah, the issue was that you need an income if your husband leaves. But what I'm saying is that white women took that and went in a direction with it that was like, yay, now I also get to work for BlackRock, just like the men. Now I can also empower women to by making them insecure and telling them what cosmetic procedures they need. And da 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 da. Beyonce too, no shade. I love her, but capitalism will not save us. Look, I don't, yes, sure. But I can't do it. I can't do it. I will let people speak on Beyonce that should be speaking on Beyonce. It's not me. I will defend her. I will defend her as long as I have the breath in my lungs. I listen to people who critique her and I can see where they're coming from. And it's just never going to be me. It's never going to be me because she faces so much. Because Taylor Swift will never be judged on a large scale in the same oppressive way that Beyonce is. People will never and have never, ever been like, she didn't deserve that Grammy about Taylor Swift when she has literally never deserved a single Grammy. Like, I'm sorry for all the, for all the Swifties in here, I love y'all, but like I cannot believe people willingly choose to listen to her music when there's so much out there that they could be listening to instead. That's my opinion, okay? That's my opinion. You don't have to like take it as the gospel. But what I am saying, exactly, Peyton, what I'm saying is that Taylor Swift will never be judged. Also, Taylor Swift is like aligning herself with MAGA now, and I'm not saying that just because she's like wants to get married and have kids. I'm saying that because she literally will go to parties and pose with people that are known MAGA supporters. And she always has that choice. Do you know what I mean? Beyonce doesn't. Even when Beyonce's like, here's a country album, people were like, we're going to invent a whole new category now so that this shit never happens again. That's white privilege. That's like the colonizer mindset. You know, they invent a whole new category. They're like, no, you can go over here next time because this shouldn't have happened. Who let this slip through the cracks? This would never happen to Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift can rewrite history however she wants, but Beyonce will always be held to this standard up here. And people will still call her over. And not only that, she will surpass that standard by like 100 times over. Because I want anybody to name anybody that's alive right now that is like is like a close second to Beyonce. Go ahead. No, go ahead. It's fine. Go ahead. Just in terms of what she's been able to achieve and like her body of work, etc. Do y'all mention Beyonce? And this is what I'm going to do every time. She surpassed that standard and people still have the nerve to open their dirty mouth and call her overrated. Overrated. Taylor Swift and Beyonce are in the same category. No, the fuck they're not. No, they're not. Taylor Swift is a traitor in a lot more ways than Beyonce is a traitor. Does that make sense? So I'll never be shitting on her as much. So people say Taylor Swift is overrated too. That's because it's true. Like, I'm so sorry. People don't hold her to the same standard as Beyonce. If you put her music, her lyrics even, let's talk about Taylor Swift's lyricism. Put her lyrics next to any song from Cowboy Carter, any song from any of Beyonce's albums really, but specifically like Cowboy Carter was a very like wordy album in my opinion. Or Lemonade. Yeah, how could I? Or Lemonade or whatever. Put one of those songs, any Taylor Swift song. You know, Beyonce could write a Taylor Swift song. Beyonce could perform a Taylor Swift song. Beyonce could easily perform a Taylor Swift routine, etc. Switch them. It's not the same. It's not the same. And there's many, many, many other artists I can say that about. I can even say that about other white women. Billie Eilish could easily write and perform a Taylor Swift song. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't think Taylor Swift could write and perform a Billie Eilish song. Even if you really want to compare her with her peers, Adele as well. Exactly. Adele could easily write and perform a Taylor Swift song. Taylor Swift could never. That's my unbridled opinion of Taylor Swift. You could take it or leave it. It's my opinion. It's my opinion. My opinion. Okay. Factually, I don't know, but that's what it is. I'm amazed. Like anytime I listen to the music that I listen to, especially at times like this when like when she has her album release or whatever, and then I try to listen to it, and like every time I'm like, oh, it's the same thing. And every time I'm surprised. I'm like, really? Like people click on this on purpose? On purpose? People seek this out when there's Amare, when there's Ira Star, when there's Say Vibes, when there's Beyonce, when there's Bella Shmurda, when there is Adekunle Gold, I could literally sit here and name people that have more talent in their left thumb and that people are like just sleeping on. SZA, and you're willingly choosing, it's fine. It's fine. All right. Sorry, y'all got me going. Y'all really, even just things like people are just so used to like unseasoned music, as a lot of people are saying in the chat, where it's like, you just don't, you're like scared of it or something, you know? Like if I told like some of these people to like they're so triggered by Bad Bunny, you know? It's like they couldn't sit through a Peso Pluma song, you know? Yeah, SZA's an amazing comparison. That's what I'm saying. It's not really a comparison. You're not comparing them because you're not seeing the other like if you actually saw SZA or Beyonce for what they really are, you would never put Taylor Swift in the same category. She's just in a different category. That's it. That's all it is. That's my honest opinion, is that she's just in a different category. And the fact that we are complaining about these two things, like they're always being compared. They shouldn't be compared. And I mean that in a derogatory way. Like they should not be compared. Is there a Taylor Swift song that you like? There's songs of hers that I can hear and I can like have fun. Like, listen, I'm not like a full-blooded hater. Do you know what I mean? I don't really shit on anyone that enjoys her. If everybody else is vibing to it, I'm not going to be like, man, turn that off. Like, whatever. It is what it is. It's fine. No, I didn't shit on people that enjoyed her. I'm just saying that you're willingly like picking her over. I'm just surprised. Like, I'm just surprised that like she is so widely liked. You can enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. You know what I mean? Like I grew up, listen, I enjoy some very basic music. You know what I mean? I remember getting like off the boat, off the plane in America and hearing Crazy in Love. And y'all, my life was like absolutely changed. Like when I heard Crazy in Love and then I retroactively discovered like Destiny's Child, when I discovered Mariah Carey, even when I discovered like Kanye, you know, that was a big like blew up my brain, you know, this is in 2002. Okay. So it was like, I just happened to be introduced to like the better side of music immediately, and I could never go back. My life was changed. I'll always credit Beyonce for that because it literally like my brain came online at that time. Yeah, I listen, early Kanye, like that, and I'm not saying I don't listen to him anymore just on principle, but you know, that shit was like eye-opening. Like I just didn't know music like that existed. Like it just blew my mind, you know? Yeah. The people watching this back on YouTube are going to be so confused, but listen, this is all has to do with like white supremacy. So you don't like country? The polyphonic person. Yeah, well, when I tell you that literally was me, like at 11 years old, I was like, I'm hearing things I've never heard. I never knew were possible. And that's when I never doubted. Like I thought I was so like autistic, you guys, that I literally thought this was an open like secret. Like I talk about this all the time where I'm like, I literally thought people knew that like Black people set the tone in this country. They tell us what's cool and then we follow and then we do that. And like, then when I like understood that most people are like deniers of that and they literally think that like a mid-white performer is actually like better than the overrated Beyonce, I was like, no, this country is hella racist. This country is very, very racist. I could never unsee it after that. When people called Beyonce overrated, that was a wrap for me. Okay. Yeah, exactly. White people. But I thought that was a thing. Like I literally thought that was known. And the fact that it was so obvious to me, and white people are literally brainwashed to deny this. Like brainwashed to think that they are the standard. All right. Well, that was a fun little detour, y'all. I'm so sorry. Like, if you bring up the queen, I'm going to have to take the time and bow. That's just what is going to happen. Exactly. Because if they aren't, then they will have to grapple with the fact that everything was a lie because it was a lie. So let me walk you through the progression of this woman. All right. The progression that I'm so glad you brought up lying because this perfectly connects. So she's okay with lying. This woman is okay with outright lying and trying to colonize, like trying to claim land that's not hers as her own, because she's hoping at some point someone will believe her. Like, this is what a lot of white women do because they know if they lie enough, at some point, someone will have no choice but to believe them, either out of sheer exasperation or out of like, well, they wouldn't keep saying this if it was a lie, et cetera, right? And then she's okay with the police documents instead of action because if those add up, she also wins. Okay. So the fact that like that when she went to the police and they flat out asked her, they were like, so you want to see these people jailed or unalived? I don't remember if he said unalive, but like jailed or like punished or whatever. She was like, yes. And he was like, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, I can't do that. What this is going to be a document. It's like just a police document. And she was like, that's okay. Because she knows that if she can stack up enough of these police documents, it's going to work in her favor. This is why white people have like the concept of HR that protects the company. This is why documentation is like such a big thing in the white community. And this is why in other communities, it's like, it's more of like a word of mouth, like honor code, whatever, honor system. But in a white community, it didn't happen if it's not in writing. That's one of the pillars of white supremacy, is it didn't happen unless we got it in writing. And that's what she's doing. Okay. Now, then she starts videoing them, which is an invasion of their privacy because the police officer basically told her that she should, because he wrote off her concern and being like, well, we don't have this harassment on video. Like, there's literally no proof, like no whatever. Let me go back. Crystal, yeah, that's exactly why they make fake police calls. Exactly why. That's exactly why they make those fake police calls, because they know eventually it's just going to add up. And there's this thing of like, if you can document something enough, whether it's actually true or not, and you're white on top of that, that's privilege. That's the privilege that you have, because it's not just paperwork. It's an excuse. It gives you further permission to do more. And that's why like the founding fathers ultimately were successful in their colonization, because a lot of what they did was like put shit in writing and then refer to it as like, well, this is legal. This is official. They like literally weaponized the written word against people. Like, that's what it is. And this continues to this day because we refuse to eradicate the systems that uphold this, which is white supremacy, which is like the most brutal system ever. And we actually view it as civil. We view all this in writing stuff as civil, police calls, adding up evidence, videotaping people. Like, that's why Karens do that, by the way. That's why they'll just silently start recording you, is because they're hoping that you'll do something that will justify their actions. Does that make sense? Yup. Yeah, Black Widow, that's exactly right. Yeah, Mad Cat, that was crazy. Crazy. Okay, so let me get to this because I only got about 30 minutes left. So the next step in that is because she was basically told that if she had video proof, they could be sent to jail. So she starts videotaping them, which is a form of harassment. And her plan, her literal plan, was to antagonize them enough to provoke a punishable reaction. Okay. But now, again, this community was well versed in this. Okay. Because they have to be. So they knew damn well that they could not actually be provoked into a reaction. That's not the way for them to go. And so when she was not able to do that, when she wasn't able to antagonize them enough to provoke that punishable reaction that would justify her enacting like on one of them or getting them sent to jail or whatever, she wanted to see children jailed. Like, that's crazy. And when she wasn't able to do that, she set up a surefire situation that would allow her to use legal violence. I need people to understand that these gun laws, these stand your ground laws, are legal violence against marginalized communities, specifically against people of color. And um this is why Trayvon Martin was such like a big thing, because it was the catalyst for those kinds of laws, because they were like, we need to make this okay. Like they saw that situation and they said, how do we make this legal actually? How do we actually make sure that this happens more often? Because what keeps the white supremacy intact? It's violence. This is exactly what I said in the beginning. Violence is allowed under white supremacy, but anger and conflict are not. So violence and fear are very much okay. But when you try to do anything productive, then it's not okay. And also, if you are a person of color enacting violence against a white person, then it's also not okay. All right, let me catch up on the comments quick. Yes, Crystal, violence shrouded in civility. That's why um that's why they have to have these police reports. That's why she was calling the police over and over and over, because she's like, if I have this track record of calling the police, then I can pretend like I was antagonized into this, when really she was trying to antagonize other people. So that's exactly right. So Lizzo Rizzo says, why didn't the community have videos of her behavior? Because it wouldn't help them. Like I mean, and that maybe not a question for me to answer, but that's just the first thing that like comes to mind is like, so what if they did? So what if they did? Like the police had body cam footage of her behavior. It was caught on her own cameras, but yeah, exactly. That's what Orange Man is trying to do right now. Exactly. Yeah, even the police were sick of her and they still kept having to come out there. Like they couldn't put her in jail for harassing people, because I would just never fly. Like a court would never see that as a jailable offense. Yeah, user 928. I'm not going to read that whole comment out loud, but I know what you're talking about and why you would say that. And that's why like immigrants are not to be trusted either, because immigrants will approximate themselves. They're class traitors too. They're traitors. A lot of immigrants are. We are. I should say. I should include myself in that, because I'm also an immigrant, and I'm sure that there's been situations. In fact, I know for a fact there's been situations where I have betrayed people that I should have had solidarity with. And I really hope that, those have been as few and far in between as possible, but it is what it is. Yeah, this is just water with lemon. I work out a lot, so I just use that to replenish my electrolytes. But yeah, y'all be careful what immigrants you trust, because immigrants have access to white immigrants have access to white supremacy to a certain point, but very much like 90 something percent. They're going to be the last to be sort of like demonized against, because it's like whiteness. That's the solidarity there. Yeah. Okay. So white women's tears can be turned on and off. Ash, I totally agree with that, but it's not for me to speak on. But yes, it's true, because it's all turtles all the way up and turtles all the way down. That is what it is. You have to judge people by their actions. You can't essentially, when we say well, so I can trust immigrants now, it's like kind of like you're judging a book by its cover regardless. When we want to be liberated, we have to actually hold people to the standards of their actions, and not to these vague things that actually bypass what their actions are. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, again, this is not for me to say. It's not a phrase for me to use, but there's a certain phrase that Black people say, that not all certain types of folk are kinfolk. It's not everybody is on your side automatically just because they look like you, or just because they look like a someone that you've been previously able to trust. It sucks, but that's what these hierarchical systems, they survive because they allow people to betray each other. That's the thing. And I made a lot of notes about like the way that the community handled it is honestly, I think, thank you, the one and only. I don't like to appropriate things, and I just don't feel comfortable being like, oh, and this applies to, that's not my business, is to call out other white people, other immigrants, and like just kind of put it out there that it's like it does go all the way up and all the way down. Like white people also have this certain things of like intersectionality that I'll have to make like a whole other video on this, where they can be betrayed by other people based on that, like neurodivergence, disability, poverty, etc. Right? So it's not like that applies to white people too, but in a way less harmful way, way less violent way, I should say. But it's a thing, goes all the way up and all the way down. Is the individualistic mindset of the country. Exactly, Peyton. Exactly. Thank you, Alexis. I'll be posting this on YouTube. I'm wrapping this up in about 30 minutes, but stick around if you can, or if you're like, I have no idea what's going on, go watch this documentary, especially if you're a white person. I'm not going to recommend this to Black people. I can't. And in good faith, I just cannot. Based on the title, you can probably surmise what this was about and what the fuck happened if you're Black. I'm not going to tell you to go and watch it. You can read a synopsis and then catch up on the YouTube video. If you're white, please go watch this. Or if you have like white, any kind of privilege like that can be weaponized against communities of color, Black people, etc. I think it's very important to see how she built up to this. You know what I mean? It started out very like, oh, she's just an angry old lady. She's just like some dumb old lady. She doesn't like kids. She doesn't like fun, etc. And then the climax of the whole thing is somebody paid for it with their life. Somebody paid for her privilege with their life. So my next point was, I wanted to say that about the community, the way that that community sticks by each other, including the white women, is a good example for all white women. Okay, because they, again, I've already said this, they are doing this because they know what they have incentive to do it. But we all have incentive to do it. Even if you think you're so far removed from like poverty or from being treated like, like an underprivileged class, you're not. That's the whole point of this country. That's the whole point of these systems of power, is that you're never too far from the ground to be on the ground, or to be dug underneath the ground or whatever. Like, you are never that far. There was a lot of people in like 2008, etc., that were driving up to food banks in their like Bentleys. You know what I mean? And they were like, I just can't sell this car because then I won't have a way to get around. So, because now I don't have credit and I'm kind of like homeless. Like, I live in this car. It can all be snatched away from you so quick. And that's the whole point. That's why they turn you against people who live in poverty. That's why they turn you against. Anyway, but the way that that community stuck together, regardless of their motives, the white people's motives in that community, is exactly how we need to stand up to the oppressive laws being made. Like, you have to stick together. You have to be like, no, they didn't do that. Did not happen. I know that woman. She's part of this community. She's not doing whatever this crazy lady says she's doing. This is a smear campaign, etc. Because if any, especially if that white woman would have been like, oh, I don't know, well, I better stay out of this, which is something that white women are so tempted, to do. Again, myself, I'm always calling myself out when I say white women. We're tempted to be like, oh, that's none of my business, really. I don't know. I didn't see anything. I didn't, whatever. No, the fact that she very much like, no, and don't let her lie to you. I know that woman. This is, that was really that. I hate that it still didn't, save her life, but it saved her and her children probably a lot of further harassment, And again, not to give all these props to like some, white lady. Like I said, she did what she did because she knows it's going to come back to her. She knows it's like when you're in community, and this is why they love the cul-de-sacs, like white supremacists, like love the cul-de-sacs. They love that ability to kind of like, no, it's none of my business. I don't really know them. I don't know who that is. That's why people that live in like tight knit communities, and that's why like white people hate when there's like apartment buildings, like God forbid an apartment building. It's like the safest place to be if shit starts going down is like an apartment building, is like a place where you can all see each other, is a place where you have to cooperate. And suburbs allow you to like not cooperate. And that's why so many white people, again, they're obsessed with bomb shelters and like preppers, like they're all preppers and stuff. It's like, what are you prepping for? You're prepping for the fact that you willingly don't have community. That's the prep. Okay, so to my next point, white women's tears can be turned on and off. And this was the craziest and yet the most believable part of the documentary. Russell, I absolutely will. Yes. HOAs. Oh my God, y'all. I personally don't have time right now, but I promise I'll come back to that. I will come back to that. Right, that's so funny. No, listen, if you are living out in the country and you can't, that's the other side of that coin, is that it forces other people to be preppers because they can't depend on their community, like in a way I prep, I buy the big bags of rice at Costco just in case. I'm like, it's a lot of rice, but you never know. It's an easy food to make and it doesn't really go bad. So my next thing is that the way she turned it on and off, right? She went from, and this is why, like, when you see Karens like crying, it's so uncanny. It's not real tears, suppressed anger and violence, coming out in the form of something that they feel is more palatable. So she couldn't say the things that she wanted to say, like these N words, these N words, that, and so she cried instead, but it wasn't real tears. It's almost like this other way for their racism to come out, right? That's like the Emmett Till thing. That's what it is. Because she was able to switch it off just like that. And she was like, yeah, so anyway, she went from this angry, hysterical, just like hyperventilating and like, to just anyways, like whatever happened, like, I don't know, I just wasn't really in my right mind, like so perfectly calm. And this is why white women oftentimes will be, oh, it's mental illness. It's mental. All of a sudden, it's a mental illness. It's, yes, weaponized victimhood. Exactly. Psychotic pathology. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't need to tell this to Black women because they experience this all the time at work, just in public, in their neighborhoods. It's a thing that white women know is going to work because it's worked always. And just like we talk about white men, or like men in general, cis men are trained to be narcissists, that's like white women receive almost the exact same training. Almost. They just learn to perform it differently. For men, for white men, and when I say men as a whole, I mean cis men. But when men display their anger and violence, they're allowed to do it outright because, again, that's how they keep the patriarchy intact. But when white women display anger and violence, they have to do it in a covert way. And you'll find that difference all the time. My friend Jason and I were just talking about this, that more men will be like a grandiose narcissist and more women will be like covert narcissists. Very few women are grandiose narcissists. They're mostly in that covert category. And this applies to whiteness. Yeah, it's to bait the men to get violent. Exactly. And that's exactly what she was always hoping to do with those male cops, except for she was trying, again, white women don't realize that their white woman-ness really only serves them as long as they're attractive. They're young. The men have some reason to believe that the woman might fuck them afterwards. Like that's a huge part of white women's white privilege. So she would try to make herself like very pitiful. She would try to make herself like, I'm cold, like that. She went for the fragility, the old woman, like fragility part of it, where she's like, I'm just so helpless. Crystal, I actually had a whole video about this on TikTok. And guess what? The white women got it taken down. And it is actually still up on my YouTube. And it's under If you go to my YouTube channel and search monitoring spirits, it will pop up. But yes, white people overstare, they monitor and watch because that's white supremacy. That's how they never overseer, right? That's that word, overseer. I love that you literally said it here. Overstare, overseer, officer, overseer. Those are all the same things. It's another form of violence. It's that I'm always watching you and I can do bad things to you if you step out of line. And it's a way to exercise power. Hi, Retro. It's a way to exercise power that they typically don't have. Like white women look up at white men and they think, I want that. And they never want to look at the people that they marginalize, right? Because again, that's the way that privilege works. Privilege keeps all of these systems intact because some people have privilege and then they don't want to give it up. Even like all the men, I just saw a video by Bad Gal Sav. Look her up if you don't follow her yet. But she was saying that like everybody wants like black women in movies and film and art and all that, like visible and everything until they feel like it's taken an opportunity away from them. And I talk about this too with like Beyonce, right? I promise I won't go on another tangent, but it's the way that people were flaming her after the Grammys, like as if she took something from Billie Eilish. And it's like, no, she just did it better. And that's you now the thing is that when you platform black women, now everybody has a higher standard to reach. It's a whole thing. Good for you. Exactly, Crystal. That's the only way to do it. And it's not guaranteed to work. That's the scary part, is that it's not guaranteed to work. And so do it definitely with caution. Like out-whiting white people is like, you still have to have that white privilege in order for it to be perfectly safe. And that's why like white people need to be allies. I'll actually give you guys an example of this. One time, my husband and I were paddle boarding across a lake that we frequent in the summers. And we were paddle boarding and we come across like a little commotion on the shore. And there was this family. They were people of color, just trying to enjoy the lake, fishing. And next to them was a white man who was also fishing, but he was harassing the fuck out of this family. He was literally like, you need to leave. This is not for you. Like, da da da. I just can't do this. Like, he was losing his fucking shit. And we just stayed there. We were like, hey, like, are you guys okay? What's going on? And they were like, this man's just like harassing us. So we started harassing him. We were like, sir, do you own this land? Like, show me your name on this piece of property. And we actually harassed him to the point of leaving. That's where like other white people, if they were thinking in a form of like solidarity, they would step in and be like, this is not okay. And actually harass those people. That's really the way forward. And that's why I'm glad that like white people have been coming out to protest and stuff like that, that they're not like, they no longer have that cushion, you know, of being like, oh, the black women will come out and protest. And now that that's not happening, laws are being made that are affecting more and more and more white people. And now they have to come out. Yeah, Britt. And again, once you understand that this protects you too, that this gains you actual solidarity, that's what it is. That YouTube video, if you go to my YouTube and type in monitoring spirits, it will pop up. Why white people overstare and oversee. Yeah, so the rest of my notes are basically about how unfair everything was after sort of the climax of the story, which was obviously incredibly unfair, incredibly heartbreaking, incredibly just unconscionable that this was just allowed to happen. And that not only that, but she premeditated it so much. That's why I went through that progression, is because this was kind of her goal all along. She knows that colonization is enforced with violence. So she thought, if I just shoot one of these people, then I'm going to be allowed to claim my space. They'll know not to mess with me because that's the mindset. And she thought she really thought she was going to get away with it on those like stand your ground laws. Probably because that Trayvon Martin case set a precedent. And then that man is still out there walking free, selling merch. You know what I mean? Like she had every reason to believe she was going to get away with it. And I loved what the Reverend said about that. I do believe that was Al Sharpton, when he was like, if she wouldn't have stuck up for you, then you would have grown up believing that you don't deserve that you don't deserve to be stood up for. And the fact that she knew that and that she had to do that is that's exactly what is the end product of racism and white supremacy and all that. Because that's exactly right. If she didn't stand up for him, then she would have just taught him to be compliant. And she paid for that with her life. Would it be different if her man was there? I wondered that too. I wondered that too. And I was like, man, it's just so, you could tell that like the most heartbreaking thing about it is that those kids really were her world because she didn't even think twice. She didn't think about her safety. She was just thinking about her kids. Because they knew this lady had a gun that she's been waving around and threatening literal children with. And then when I just loved, like, honestly, the cops did like a decent job there because they were like, now, why did you say go get your mom? Because you knew she was coming over. So why'd you say go get her mom? See, this is why I do this on live and I ask for people's input because that's a great point. Lady would have been able to play victim if a black man was there. That's a great point. She would have probably actually got away with it. Yeah, Lo, I think you guys are exactly right. It would have been a lot worse if the man was there. And I think she would have been able to get away with this and like play it up. And if not unalive both of them, then they would have ended up in jail instead of her. Even with all of her history of antagonizing and, harassing this entire neighborhood. That's the thing is like the word of the entire neighborhood was not enough because they were mostly black people to stand up against the words of this one white woman, of the lies, not even the words, the lies of this one white woman. That's what it was. And just the nerve of her to be like, it's killing me. She actually used those words. It's killing me. And this is the other thing that white women will do. They will project. This is Darvo, right? Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So they will put themselves into that place of the victim. It's killing me. Ma'am, you literally just killed somebody. You took a life. You took a mother from her children and it's killing you. The victim complex truly knows no bounds at all. At all. And they will absolutely do this every single time. And when they leave her alone in that room, she stops faking again immediately. The mask comes off again. And she just picks up that water bottle and just takes a little drink and is just sitting there. The fact that they didn't even hold her, the fact that she got to go to a hotel, they were like, oh, we're just trying to make sure you're safe. From what? The consequences of her actions is crazy. Well, Monique, I would actually venture to guess that that's because narcissism is actually baked into white supremacy and baked into the general idea of like whiteness and how white people weaponize that stuff against people of color. Because it's the same way that men will like, when they get caught cheating and they throw that little hissy fit and they're like, this hurts me. I'm so upset. And it's like, you just got caught cheating, but they're doing Darvo because the narcissism is built in the individuality is narcissism. The individualistic anti-community mindset is exactly that. Anti-empathy, anti-remorse, whatever. It's like, you only did this. And the same way that like, this is why white women get called the men of women, because it's like, make yourself the victim in every situation when you're actively hurting somebody else. And then it's like, you always have a reason for doing whatever horrible thing you did. The same way that men will be like, oh, I cheated on you because you weren't having enough smacks with me. I had to unalive this woman because I thought she was going to unalive me. And it's like, you had literally no reason to think that. And I'm really glad the cops broke it down for her really clear. They were like, no. Yeah, they have that you made me do this attitude. Exactly. Yeah, they absolutely should assign this dog. When they said it was 2 minutes, and I mean, I had a feeling that it was going to be like way shorter. And like, I had a feeling that she jumped to this, but 2 minutes is actually insane. And the fact that she had her like defense prepared, well, it felt like 10 minutes to me. She knew what she was doing. The fact that she was like, well, yeah, the N-word might have slipped out because I was taught that it means to be unpleasant, unlawful, dirty. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the white supremacy. that is like that's what gives her the justification, is that underlying meaning of these words. Like, that's why words matter. That's why it's not just a word. It's not just a slur. It's not just whatever. It's a entity of its own, and it like operates outside of reality. Like, these were kids. These were literal children doing what children do. I was a teacher. I worked with kids that age. This is just what they do. They run around and scream outside. They even sometimes, yeah, they antagonize people. Not antagonize, but like they play pranks, or like they will, whatever. But she took, the idea behind the N word, and then she like, what's the thing I'm trying to say? Projected it onto these innocent children and this innocent woman who was just being a mother, protecting her child. And she said, unlawful, dirty, unpleasant. I have the right to, you know what I mean? It's like that Black Mirror episode where they put the masks on the soldiers so that they see other people as like literal roaches or whatever. Like, that's what the white supremacy does. That's what it does. As far as like being able to see other people's humanity, you just don't. You just don't. You're like, unless these people are compliant, right? Unless these Black people are very compliant with white supremacy, like they speak a certain way, they dress a certain way, they live in a certain neighborhood, they have a certain amount of money, then they're not people, they're N-words. And I have the right, again, because of what was allowed during slavery and what was allowed for the overseers, right? It was just to take matters into their own hands. This is where Neighborhood Watch comes from. This is what the HOA is. All of that is because it's an entity of its own. It's not just a word. It is a concept. It is a why do they always fight to say? So they can keep benefiting from it. Yeah. Slips out is crazy. Slips out is absolutely crazy. It's that white woman like deferring to innocence. Oh, it just slipped out. No, the fuck it didn't. No, it didn't. Because why is it there in your mental vicinity to begin with? That's very interesting. That it was just right there, ready to slip out. Why was it right there? It feels good because it gives you power, you know? Yeah, and they like to take the pain out of the word. It's just a word. That's why I'm very specifically saying it's not just a word. It's not just a word. It's permission. It's violence against an entire community, an entire people. She has absolutely zero remorse the whole time. The whole time she's just mad she got caught. She's mad she didn't like white woman plan her way out of this enough. She thought she had all her bases covered until they were like, have you, by the way, been looking up stand your ground laws? Did this, by the way, have anything to do with like you just wanting to do this and using these laws to justify it? She was just mad she got caught. And I just want to say too, the other two things I wrote down was stand your ground is a racist law to protect people on both sides of it, white people on both sides of it. So when this happens to a white person by a Black person, when a Black person stands their ground, oftentimes they will be unfairly convicted of like it being intentional. And then when white people use it, then it's going to be, or like people use it against Black people or people with a darker skin tone, it's going to be justified. Okay. And the fact that white juries don't convict white people so much, like the fact that the stats, I know that the lady was convicted and that's really great. It still is not justice. It's just the bare minimum of consequences. They should have let the community take care of it, honestly. They should have just left her out there. The fact that they were concerned with her safety, more than the community's safety, one of whom she just shot and unalived, is crazy. They were like, we're just trying to make sure nobody hurts you. Oh my God. But the way that, they said those stats at the end and they were like, white juries oftentimes, or like the juries oftentimes don't convict white people of these crimes is because it's the same as bro code. Okay, so why do men have bro code? This is how I'm going to start explaining this shit to white women. Why do men have bro code? It goes even deeper than kid glove treatment. It's bro code. It's white code. It's the reason is I do this for you, you do this for me. I scratch my back, you scratch yours. It's so that they won't be convicted. They won't have to answer for their future crimes. And it's so that, yeah, exactly. It is, that's the real reason behind it. Is just another way that white supremacy plays out, is because those white people can see themselves like in that white woman. You know what I mean? The same way that when men are like, no, that wasn't grape, that wasn't assault, that wasn't harassment or whatever, is because if they admit that that was grape or assault or harassment, they'd have to admit that they've done it before too. And it's the same exact thing with how white people use whiteness and they kind of clock each other, and it's unspoken. Protect their own, exactly. It's protect their own. And this is a big part of white supremacy, is you protect your own. Yeah, MC Harrington, it's exactly like that. And it's exactly the same way that so many people rush to protect that horrible man whose name I don't even remember anymore, who unalived Trayvon Martin. And that's why people are like, no, it was self-defense. He had no way of knowing, da da da. And it's like, yeah, this is because you want to be able to do the same thing. You have racial prejudice and you think he was justified. You don't think he just murdered a small child. You think he was defending himself. You think that, again, it's like the Emmett Till thing. You think that even young children, even young Black children, are more violent than that you'd need a GUN. Yeah, that he was armed with a sidewalk. Like, and again, other white people sat there and agreed with it. That's the problem. That's the problem. And that's why they want to pack the courts with certain kind of judges. That's why they want to have certain kind of people in government and in power, et cetera, is because it's to uphold that larger structure of white supremacy. And I was surprised that they found her guilty. I was surprised. I definitely was not expecting that. I'm happy, but hey, thank you so much, B. That's awesome. That's exactly, see, the white guilt. Like, the fact that that concept like even exists means you know that there's something to be guilty about. Yeah, my husband and I cheered too. We were like, yes, thank God. But then, they show the stats like this was basically an outlier. Like, this was a exception, null case. Yeah, thank you, Lo. People of color can't fix what they didn't break. Dumbass. That's why there's such a thing as white guilt. Because you should feel guilty that you're not doing anything about it. Like, what the fuck? That's a projection. White guilt. Like, yeah. And why don't you feel guilty? Like, you feel okay that like you have privilege at other people's expense. You feel okay that people don't have the same type of access to justice as you. Yeah, there can never be true justice for murder because you can't bring the person back. It's kind of like saying like, oh, reparations for slavery, like they deserve the reparations, but you can never repair slavery. You can never repair the fact that people looked at other people and said, I'm going to own them and I'm going to abuse them and I'm going to use them so I can live a privileged life. Like your parents probably did that, JCX. That's exactly what's the problem. I didn't break anything either, honey. Well, you live in hell now. We all live in hell because that's your mindset. Are you going to fix it? That's the only question that fucking matters, is what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, this is why men are not leaders. I can tell you're a man. I can tell you're a white man because you're not a leader. You're a fucking embarrassment. You will blame anybody, you know what I mean? Instead of just taking responsibility like a leader would, instead of being like actually a decent human being, instead of setting a positive example, you would rather be a weak, spineless coward. I mean, I didn't break it. Who fucking cares? Now you have to use it, and it's a broken system that allows, yes, even you to fall through the cracks, as soon as you run out of money. Ask the fucking vets, okay? Ask the veterans of America. You know where you can find them? On your local street corner. There's so many white men in my city. And my husband works very closely with like the homeless population, unhoused people, etc. And he can tell you that so many of these white men that are out there on the street, like asking for help or whatever, they're veterans. They're white men. You don't have as much privilege as you think. And if you really understood that, you would get up off your ass and do something because it would benefit you too. It would benefit your children. It would benefit your grandparents, They're literally not giving out SNAP benefits next month. And who do you think that's going to affect? Yeah, that's why they're acting out right now. Exactly. Exactly. That's why like a lot of white people are protesting now. They're like, where's my privilege? Why is nobody else doing this work? Because you have to do it. Are you gonna? And I'm glad that some people are stepping up, even though it is still performative, even though it is. But the performance matters because somebody sees that performance because Trump saw that performance and he really triggered him. So, and that's his constituency turning on him. So, in the end, it's still a good thing. But yeah, it was always the responsibility of minorities. And now minorities are like, listen, it's not really going to get, it's going to get worse for us, of course. But like it's just about time that those marginalized people stopped fighting so hard for things that ultimately benefit white people the most. Like, that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. And you should be resting. And I'm so glad because this is ultimately, it's going to have to be white people putting themselves out there and putting themselves at risk. No risk it, no biscuit, because they're going to start coming for everybody. That's what it is. Y'all won't put yourselves at risk. And that's what I'm waiting to see, because the protests so far have been very peaceful. And we know that that doesn't actually accomplish anything. We know that most things that inspired actual change were not done peacefully. So we'll see. Ingenue Queen, I could not agree more. I also think women should stop trying to fix hateful men, but create community to uplift each other. Absolutely. Yay, I'm glad to hear that, MC. Kayla, I agree, but I just think it's time for like white people to take more responsibility and then create like a safer space for change to happen. Because that's what true like accountability, leadership, responsibility, all of that actually looks like. I highly recommend the documentary Winter on Fire. That's like a documentary about Ukraine and how they very briefly liberated themselves from an oppressive regime. But it was the people with privilege literally like came out and stood and barricaded in front of the people that were protesting. So all of their religious leaders, all the priests, things like that, they came out and they protected the protesters. And I think that's what it's going to take. And I think that it shouldn't be, yeah, it's a step in the process, Kayla. It's a canon event. And honestly, I think like DT is kind of doing a favor to this whole thing. He's kind of speeding up the process because yeah, he's snatching away a lot of privilege that white people feel very entitled to. But I completely understand your anger. I completely understand your being sick of it. I totally get it. It's just something that's going to have to happen because Black people have been absorbing, unfortunately, the impact of injustice and unfairness and all that. And it's time for white people to step up and absorb some of that impact a little bit. Even if it starts with parades and not protests, like even if it starts, performative, it gets people more comfortable with actually going out there and actually like taking those first steps because like they just literally haven't done it. But, all right, y'all, I love you, but I have to go. I got a workout class to make it to. I'm trying to do a 30-day challenge. I took last week off to like reset. Like I was having like honestly just bad takes because I just wasn't focused on the right things. And I can admit that. I can, call myself out when I need to. So I've just been like reading, watching, listening, and doing just what I need to do to like recenter and kind of go back to the basics. And I'm just ever more convinced that I need to be like educating the people that are actually responsible for what we're going through. Hopefully they will listen. They get mad when I say it too, but at least I'm not like in danger of violence or anything like that. They just get mad at me. But anyways, y'all, I love you and I appreciate you so, 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 so much. Thank you for being here. I love y'all. See ya. Bye.